I was flipping through my Bible the other day and I had a thought. What's the most read book of the Bible? So I looked it up, and although I found several different lists, there was one that I kept seeing over and over again towards the top. It was a book of the Bible that I probably read the least because honestly it just interests me the least. But this book is honestly so much different than any other book in the Bible. It's the book of Psalms, and I decided to read it this week to try and figure out why it's so popular and maybe even see if I can grow to like it myself. So I started reading it the first day on my floor, but I kept getting distracted over the thought of just like why? Like, why do people prefer this book over something like John or Matthew or Job or literally any other book of the Bible? So I paused to go look it up, and Google said they provide a way to express a wide range of human emotions to God. I wasn't sure how much I believed it at that point, but I went back to reading anyway. But then I got distracted by something else. There was a cardinal outside my window, which is a super rare, entirely red bird. Okay, maybe it's not actually that rare, but I feel like I never see them. I'm not sure why, but at that moment I became desperate to get this bird on camera, but it flew away super fast. It was sitting like right there in front of my window. Then I was wondering why I was even filming it when no one would believe me anyway, because again, super rare. That's when I decided that by the end of this video, I was gonna get that cardinal on camera if it was the last thing I did. The next day, I read several more Psalms when I realized I'd been doing something completely wrong this entire time. I started at the beginning of the book, and I've just been going through reading Psalm after Psalm after Psalm. So I'm realizing that's probably not the best way to do this. So instead, I think what I want to try and do is start reading like one Psalm before everything I do throughout my day, if that makes sense. I'm gonna read a Psalm before I go to bed, before I read a book, before I do anything. So that way I'm reading multiple throughout the day, but it's like broken up a little bit more. I feel like that's just the best way to do it. So that's what I'm going to do from here on out. The first thing I did that day was go to the gym. And of course, I forgot to read a Psalm beforehand. So I read one in the car on my phone before walking in. I read one about David hiding in a cave from all of his enemies. And while working out, I decided that in the future, I was going to hand pick Psalms that kind of applied to me a little bit better. The gym went really well, but was it better because I decided to read a Psalm beforehand? Who knows? Hard to say. I'm back from the gym. When I got home, I decided to work on my computer for a little bit, but then I realized I should read a Psalm first. I handpicked this Psalm and it was a lot better than the last one. I know that I've definitely read a bunch of the really happy, like, praise Psalms before, but I feel like, or at least I'm realizing now, that I don't think I've read a bunch of like the sad, more like complainy type of Psalms. And what's really weird is that I'm kind of liking those a little bit more than the happy ones, which sounds really weird, but I feel like those are just so much more relatable. Later, I went outside to start hunting for this cardinal. Even though the sun was out, it was literally freezing outside. So this mostly consisted of me walking around my house making this face. We have a ton of different bird feeders, but I didn't see one bird out there. Probably because it was so cold, I couldn't put effort into actually being quiet and waiting for birds to come. Needless to say, I gave up pretty quickly and went back inside. Bird watching was a no-go for today, but trust me, I will get this bird on camera before the end. The next morning, I read a Psalm before starting the day. This day was even more freezing than the day before. It's so cold. We had a ton of freezing rain and there was just like ice everywhere. So what do normal people do when it's freezing raining outside? Obviously, you go out and take a walk. I've just been sitting inside for a long time and I really feel like going out and doing something, so I'm gonna take a walk. But not before reading a Psalm. I ended up reading Psalm 37, which was all about committing everything you do to God. So I decided to commit this walk to him because let me tell you, it was miserable. It was so cold. My coat wasn't fully waterproof, so it got really wet on the inside. Honestly, I have no idea why I did this. Later, I read another Psalm before going to bed. And I will say that reading the Bible in general before going to bed is such a good idea. It makes you feel so much more peaceful before going to bed, and I always fall asleep so quickly when I do it. The next day, I woke up and surprise, surprise, I read a Psalm. I'm like getting so used to reading a Psalm before everything I do that it's becoming just like my routine. I'm just so used to doing it that like it just feels normal now. After that, I kept seeing birds everywhere, like out of every single window. I tried to stake out at one window and catch the cardinal, but it didn't work. The cardinal just never showed up, but it was no biggie because I was going to catch that thing eventually. I literally just saw it again outside this window, but it flew away, so I'm moving on. Then I read a Psalm and ate lunch and then didn't do much else for the rest of the day. Okay, so supposedly it is going to snow outside today, which might not sound that crazy, but this is South Carolina and I don't even remember the last time it snowed here. And I also just can't help but imagine how cool it would be to get a picture of a bright red cardinal in the snow. So I'm crossing my fingers that it will snow. I'm gonna get ready to go outside and take as many pictures of this bird as I can. Even if I don't get the picture, it's just gonna be so cool to see snow again. I've also decided to step up my picture taking game. Before I was taking pictures with my phone, and I've recently switched to using the camera, and I think that's gonna help me get a much better picture. I'm sitting in front of my window just looking at the sky and waiting and hoping to see snowflakes. And in the meantime, I decided to read a couple of Psalms. I just read Psalm 139, which I already knew was a really good one, but this one definitely thus far is my favorite. That one, and also there was another one I read earlier, Psalm 13. It's a really short one, and it isn't the most like positive psalm, but I still really like it. So everyone should go read those. I was really excited for it to snow outside, and then it ended up just not snowing, and it was so disappointing. At one point throughout this day though, I did end up seeing the cardinal again outside my window, but I was trying to take a picture through the window and the screen in front of it, and it just didn't focus on the bird at all, and you can't even tell what it is. And before I could like go outside and get closer, it just flew away. I will say that even though it is a little bit annoying to have to pull this book out and start reading before I do anything in my day, I have to admit they are very comforting, and they're just nice to read. Like, they just make you feel good. It's slowly starting to become something that I'm actually looking forward to, which I never really expected to come from this. There's something about reading about other people going through the same things as you and watching how they're getting through it through these long, beautiful, interesting prayers. It's just really nice. All you have to do is put effort into setting time aside, opening your Bible, and actually looking for it. There were a ton of things that went on this week that I didn't really show, but I still read a psalm before each one of them. It's actually been a pretty busy week and a little bit stressful too, so taking a pause before doing anything new to sit and just calm down and read a psalm was like so helpful. And on this last day is when I really realized that these psalms really do provide a way to express a wide range of human emotions to God. And although I finished the week and I still didn't get my cardinal picture, bird watching in general was actually kind of fun, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. So I guess it was still all worth it. So it turns out while I was editing this, the weather said it was gonna snow again, and I immediately got my hopes up, and this time the weather didn't lie and it actually did snow. So I put in work on this day. I was staking out in the freezing cold just trying to get this picture. For some reason it seemed like the birds loved the snow because they were all out in it all day, and eventually I finally got the picture of the cardinal.